Republican Party has gone through many changes over the years and decades. We've had the Republican Party of Lincoln that pushed through legislation that freed the slaves way back in the 1800s and brought real fiscal conservatism to the bulging purse strings of the federal government during that era in our history. The Republican Party in the early 20th century was a very conservative and small government style of representation, and the Democrats dominated the House and Senate for many years, and budgets rose and deficit spending started becoming a norm in American politics. The anti-communist Republicans in the 1950s were, by and large, a pretty scary lot, and while the country flourished while simultaneously asleep at the wheel during the Truman and Eisenhower administrations, the anti-commie clan worked around the clock to scare the bejeebies out of the American people. And the main character in that entire fiasco was Senator Joseph McCarthy of Wisconsin. But it should be noted that his legal counsel during that time was a guy from New York named Roy Cohn, who later in life was the #1 lawyer for another guy from New York named Donald Trump. During the 1960s, the Republicans were kind of shifting around a little bit. You had the staunch conservatives like Barry Goldwater of Arizona, and the ex-Vice President Dwight Eisenhower and Richard Nixon, who narrowly lost to John F. Kennedy in 1960 and would reappear triumphant in the election held in 1968 against Hubert Humphrey, although the real threat to Nixon's chances at holding office were snuffed out in a Los Angeles hotel kitchen when Senator Robert Kennedy was gunned down in the summer of '68. There is no doubt Kennedy would have won the presidential election that year if for no other reason that his brother was assassinated in Dallas in 1963. There are some that claim the events that took place on that fateful sunny day were orchestrated by a coalition of both Republicans and Democrats who wanted the war in Southeast Asia to escalate above the level it was during that time, and John Kennedy was strongly against any escalation of the war and wanted to bring all those young American troops home where they belonged. As the 1970s spread its wings across America, the Republican Party was going through a rather healthy beating. Richard Nixon was forced to resign after the Watergate fiasco was fully uncovered and the public finally learned what a crook Nixon really was. Then President Gerald Ford gave him a pardon to conceal him from any possible post-administration prosecution. Now, Gerald Ford was appointed as Nixon's vice president after Spiro Agnew had to hightail it out of Washington, lest he get swept up in the whole Watergate scandal. It should be noted that Gerald Ford was a key member of the Warren Commission that found that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone and there was no conspiracy whatsoever surrounding the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. And if you believe that, I've got a bridge I'd like to sell you. In the '72 elections, America had hope in the form of Senator George McGovern of South Dakota, but that election in '72 was won by Nixon, and as I've stated a bit earlier, we all know how that election was swindled away from the American people by good old Tricky Dick Nixon. It wasn't until the elections held in 1976 that the Democrats returned to the Oval Office in the form of Georgia Senator Jimmy Carter, who served as the 39th President of the United States from 1977 until 1981. In 1980, the Republicans got their great savior for a return to the Oval Office in the form of former B-list actor and corporate pitchman and California governor Ronald Reagan. Reagan served 2 terms as president, and his vice president, George Bush, also served a single term as president in the early 90s. It was during this Reagan-Bush period in Republican Party history that a frog-faced fella from the state of Kentucky beat out the Democratic incumbent Senator Walter Huddleston to gain his tiny toe in the door in the U.S. Senate. But even from the start, young Mitch McConnell had big plans for his political future and hoped to one day become the Senate Majority Leader. It took several decades and many backdoor shady deals, but Mitch was finally able to obtain that status in 2015 after the Republicans gained control of the Senate. The tactics they employed to accomplish this is the same type of two-faced shenanigans they have been known for over the years, but Mitch McConnell has elevated this style of governance to new levels of deceit towards the American people previously unheard of in American politics. He flips and flops from one side of an issue to another faster than a thoroughbred at the Kentucky Derby. His only semi-match at flip-flops is South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, with an honorable mention to Texas Senator Ted Cruz, thrown in for a little southern border salsa blend. As Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell has stymied and blocked more legitimate legislation than anyone else in history. During the 2 Obama administrations, he shut down literally every single piece of legislation presented to the Senate by the Democratic Party. I don't mean some of them, but literally every single one, even those supported by his Republican colleagues. His refusal to even hold hearings on the confirmation of possible Supreme Court Justice Merrick Garland has gone down in history as being beyond the pale in terms of suppressive government maneuvers. In the single term of former reality TV celebrity and multi-failed businessman from New York, Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell blocked legislation put forth by his own party, but was more than on board to push through as many far-right conservative judges as he could possibly ram through the appointment process, many of which were confirmed during the final year of Trump's presidency, which was the very point of opinion he used to block the appointment of Merrick Garland during the Obama administration. He was quoted at the time of saying something along the lines of, "The American people should have a voice in the choices for court justices, so we will wait until after the election." All the while during his many decades in the Senate, he has quietly and shrewdly funneled money to himself and his state. Now, one would certainly think that a small state like Kentucky wouldn't have the same financial burdens as a much larger state like, say, Michigan or Ohio. But he has consistently brought into his state, year after year, decade after decade, more federal money than they pay into the federal system. Much, if not all of this money, should be going to the fine people of Kentucky, but Tricky Mitch has consistently diverted funds to corporate entities and businesses that then funnel those funds back to him in the form of campaign contributions. His current wife, Elaine Chao, who was named Transportation Secretary during the Trump administration and has family ties to one of China's biggest shipping concerns and crime syndicates, hence the appointment to Transportation Secretary to ensure that her family got contracts on a lot of international shipping done by the U.S. Mitch McConnell not only does not serve the fine people of the state of Kentucky, and how he manages to bamboozle them over and over is a true mystery, but he serves no one but himself in terms of what stance he may take or legislation he may endorse. If it benefits him, he's all in. If not, he'll filibuster or try to find some other form of political shenanigans to block and prevent things from being accomplished in the United States Senate. And he has done this for years and years and years. It is time for the people of Kentucky and the citizens of America to rid themselves of this vestige of greed and corruption known as Mitch McConnell. Don't forget to like and hit that subscribe button.